Dan Tate.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
So good. How are you?
I'm just great.
It's so good to see your face.
Well, thank you.
Um,
I would say it's good to see your face, but sorry, I'm in kind of a mood today.
I see that.
Yeah.
As we were listening to that intro music, I was thinking back to our last conversation. You're right. It is a little stressful. I feel like we need to make a little change.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's just the music or if it's the music plus the countdown where I'm like, okay, ha.
I frantically like drink and check my make sure, and then I'm like, okay, here we go. And I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But Dan, do you know who we have? You know who we have this week. Of course you do. But are you super excited to chat with Liz today?
I'm very excited.
I've known Liz for a while. I actually don't know for sure when I'm gonna have to ask her this question if she remembers when we first met. I don't really know. But she started a podcast and I was on her podcast a while back. She has a great podcast, does lots of film and theater, and she's a writer. Like she literally does it all. She is like the epitome of like a Renaissance woman. So is that a Renaissance woman or man still a thing? Is that a thing?
I think so.
Okay, great. Well, that's what she is.
Well, great. Minus the affair. I mean,
right.
maybe she's all dressed up too, but that would be fun.
I don't know, but I told her before we started that I could see her camera, and I totally just watched her like hop to the corner of her room, and I don't know what she was doing. And so now the very first question, hi Chad, welcome. But the very first question is going to be asking what was going on in the little camera that I was watching. Right, here she is, freaking Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hi. If that's legitimately your first question, it's a two-part answer, and I'll be so quick. I have a really loud heater in my studio because my studio is actually part of my garage, and so it's freezing out here. But I was like, that humming is going to get irritating. And the hopping was because I'm actually on crutches right now, which is stupid in a story that whatever, like it's not worth the time. But I didn't want to like get my crutches on and go over and turn off the heater. So I just like bounced.
I loved it. It was delightful.
I'm sorry I missed it. Although it's probably a good thing because it's not good to get me started like that way. I'd be like really goofy the whole show.
Dan, you're so chatty today. You have had a day.
I know. It's been a day. It's been a week. Lots of things, but work. Anyway, that's really boring stuff. So
anyway, Liz, tell us about you. Like, give everybody the intro of who you are and where you came from, and tell us all of the important points in life from birth to now.
Whoa, that's a heavy responsibility. So I was born into a big family that is like the Brady Bunch, only bigger. And I'm the youngest. And I have been interested in like everything, basically, from the time that I was born on. So I kind of have like hobby or creativity ADHD. I like to do lots of different things. And I think theater and writing were some of the first things I really got into in the arts. And it's just kind of expanded since then from there.
That's amazing. So this is just off of what you said, like what moment do you remember when you were growing up going, I want to be in the arts? Like what made you go, this is my spark? Like this is the moment that I realized I want to do this.
I don't know. I think I wanted to do it long before it was something that was unnatural or surprising. Like I was a kid, right? Playing dress ups like all along, or like making voices with my toys, or pretend imaginative. The performing arts, singing, music, all of that was just sort of a natural part of my childhood play, as it is, I think, for most kids. So it kind of wasn't I think the realization was more like, oh, people don't do this when they grow up, as opposed to I want to do this when I grow up.
Totally understand that. Dan, you're going to say something. Go for it.
It's really interesting because I'd never really thought about that. Like it seems like every little kid starts out that way, and then something happens and it goes away, and it just makes me think, like, I wonder what makes it go away.
People saying you can't do that when you grow up. That's what I think.
Okay, stop singing. You're not very good. That
Or
might have
you
been
never make a living, or why don't you get a real job, or like, but what's your backup plan going to be when that doesn't work out?
I remember when I was majoring in theater, people would be like, "What are you majoring in?" "Oh, theater." And they're like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do?"
Theater.
I'm going to do theater. Like that's what the point is here. And so it's just interesting the way that people sort of stifle creativity that way. And then I think it becomes almost socially unacceptable to say that you're a working artist in some ways. I know that's kind of a weird way to say it, but like it's almost like you're like, "Oh, I'm a working artist." Really? Now what are you really? Like where do you wait tables? You know, those sorts of jokes that come up often. So
right, but it makes me wonder. Like, it's to me, it's something that's been passed around, right? Because everybody grows up thinking that if you're an artist, you have to starve.
Yeah.
Like almost everybody grows up thinking that way. So, something teaches us, and I think it's interesting because I think what taught me that is artists who would create and they would talk about the most difficult times in their life, not about what's going on right now, where they found a way to make a living, but when they were struggling to make a living. And so then that's all I could ever think about is, well, can't be an artist. I mean, I don't want to starve.
I totally agree with you. I think a lot of it is self-imposed within our own industry.
I totally agree. Okay, so you grew up, you played make believe, you did all of that, then you started doing theater and writing more as an adult. I'm assuming, is that true?
Yeah, I started doing I went and did some film work as a kid, represented by one of the local agencies, and I was doing theater, and then I started to get paid for theater about the same time that I started to get paid for film. And it still wasn't maybe the thing I was going to do professionally until the end of high school. And then I thought, you know what, I think I am going to do this professionally as an educator, because that'll be the place where like I can have a real job and I'll make money, and that will make sense that way. But honestly, I've worked as an educator, but not nearly as much as I've worked in the arts not as an educator since then. So I think this is just where I'm supposed to be.
So you do all that. What made you go, "You know what I'm going to do? Start a podcast." Like this is such an interesting thing, because I've known you as a theater and artist, like I've known you through film and things like that. But like then I remember the day you actually emailed me and were like, "Hey, I'm starting this new podcast. Do you want to be on it?" And I was like, "Well, of course I do, but like how random could this be?" Like, so where did that come from?
It was really random. Like I said, I like trying new things, and a podcast had always been kind of floating around in the periphery of my mind as like, that's something that people can do. They can just figure out how to do that. Maybe you want to do that sometime. And then I was teaching PE at the time at my daughter's school, and I got a hernia where like your intestines come out your abdominal wall, because I like had babies and then gotten really fit, and so like holes had opened up in my abs. And
That is a lot of story you just told. That
was gross. Yeah, I'm sorry. I realized as I was going, I was like, you should stop talking about this and move on. But it was,
you gotta keep going. You committed. It's like improv. You committed. You gotta go.
Yeah. Sorry. So I was recovering from that surgery and not at work because I couldn't go back to teaching PE right away. And I was like, you know what would be fun to do that you can do from a chair when you can't walk? I'll start that podcast that I want to start. Maybe I should decide what it's about. And I decided that I've always wanted to go back and get a master's degree in like the arts, maybe something specific, but also maybe something really broad. And I thought, my podcast can do that, and then I won't have to pay thousands of dollars and move out of state to go to a really great program. I'll just get to learn from the people I'm interviewing, and that will satisfy like all my creative itches.
Yeah. So you started, it's called In the Telling, and people can follow it, I'm sure, on like all the podcast places, right? But you also have the website lizzylizzyliz.com, which they can go to follow you and all of the things you're doing. But like, you call it In the Telling. Why did you come up with that name? What made you come into that?
So like within the first 24 hours of having that surgery, there's a possibility that this may have been painkiller influenced. But but I knew that I wanted to do all arts and entertainment storytelling, and I knew I wanted it to be like local. I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to be like local, and I knew I wanted it to that my guests, I wasn't going to try to get guests from other places. I wanted to meet the artists in our community. And I was trying to figure out like a really catchy tagline and a name that wasn't already taken. And I realized that a lot of the advice I was getting from the podcast community was like, you should have a very specific, narrow topic. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. It's all in the telling. I guess that's what I'm doing. So, like many of my things, it begins as an impulse that I just keep persisting with.
The very first, when you came to record with me for the podcast, it's one of my favorite memories because we had just moved into our new building here at OPA, and you were like, is there a place we can record there? And I was like, sure, of course there is. Like, we're a theater, there's got to be. And we ended up recording in the like closet of the costume department with clothes all around us, sitting on like trash cans. Like,
yeah. It was awesome. I really loved it because it wasn't just the big costume area. It was like a small area within the costume area, and the clothes were like great dampening. So
right,
that's like the most theater thing from a podcast that I've ever, like, you just make it work.
Yeah,
whatever you got to do.
So what's been the hardest thing about your podcast?
My own technical ignorance at the beginning. So the quality, like the audio quality, and sort of like my own interview ignorance, I feel like I just have gotten so much better that I look back at some of that early stuff and I'm like, man, my guests were so brilliant. I'm so irritated I got in their way. Like that the audio and I kind of hamper that. And I feel like, well, I know at some point I'm going to go back and like redo my season 1 stuff and then just get rid of the old audio so it's not out there like that. But I also feel like, you know, every time you try something at the beginning, you suck until you don't. So at least I was able to keep going long enough to get better.
Did you almost give up?
There have been a couple times that I thought, maybe I'm done. Maybe I'm no longer curious about anything. I'll take a little break and maybe I won't come back from this break. We'll see. And then like 2 weeks into the break, I have a list of like 10 more guests that I'm like, oh no, I have to come back from this break because I don't know this. I haven't talked to this person or this person. And I think sometimes it's just, you know, a little bit of burnout. You need your tiny little break and then all the juices start flowing again.
I think that's so interesting. What you're saying is it's about you learning. Like, that's such an interesting thing. And it probably helps your podcast stay so relevant and so great as it is, because it's about you being open to learn more. It's not about you trying to tell us what you already know. That's so interesting. Sorry, that was my own. I learned that right now.
It's really been critical for me because there have been a couple guests, maybe like 3 that have reached out to me over the years to be like, hey, can I be on your podcast? And I'm always like, oh, I don't know. What would we talk about? Like, I don't have questions. I feel like I only know how to interview when I'm like, you know what? I got to know this and this and this. And so yeah, there's no way I would have stuck with it if it wasn't me following my own curiosity.
Go, Dan.
So sorry, I've just been looking. How many episodes are you into? Like how long? That's what I'm trying to get at. How long have you been doing the podcast?
That's about 3 years, and I'm on episode 70 something.
That's a lot of curiosity, Liz.
Do you?
Yeah.
This is a weird question, and it's okay if you don't want to answer, but do you have a favorite? Like, is there a moment from the podcast that stands out as your favorite? And it's okay, you don't have to say me.
You were still at the beginning. I was too busy trying to like not be stupid and an idiot that like I couldn't pay attention yet. But there are a handful that I really like deeply love, and the similarities between all of them is that my guest really surprised me. I've always learned from my guests. That's why I have them on. But when I interviewed like the hypnotist Sean Paulson, and we talked about his blindness and his public speaking, and he got very open and real. And then when I interviewed the tattoo artist and we talked about helping people recover from self-harm, and I interviewed the fire dancer and we got into like taking care of plants and making jewelry from roadkill. And there's stuff that every time I'm like, well, this is cool. I had no idea we were going here, but now we're absolutely going here. Those are I interviewed a musician really early on who doesn't read any music. And I was like, that can't be, but really? Like you don't? those kinds of shockers, I guess, they astound me, and then then I have to like kind of rethink a lot of things I was already assuming. I learn even extra.
So interesting. Is there like a big get that you haven't gotten yet?
There is, and I'm gonna get him because he says I am. But I've had to reschedule multiple times because rightly he's busy. Jerry Rapier from Plan B Theater Company.
Yes.
And so there's been a couple times that we've been like this close to having that interview, and then we haven't. But he's gonna happen. It's definitely gonna happen.
For sure. I'm sure he's watching right now going, oh, I'm going to schedule that because he watches this.
I'm sure he does.
I don't think he does.
Because everybody watches this.
Yes, we are actually a nationwide pod video cast with
We're discussing syndication, but
we're actually going to take over for Ellen on we're taking over her talk show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. We just announced it with you. So there you go. That's big news from us.
There it is.
So what advice do you have for people that want to get into podcasting? Is it full? Like, is podcasting full?
It's not. It is a super fast growing industry. There's a lot of space if what you are going into it for doesn't already exist. If you are like, you know what I want to do? What Joe Rogan does. It's probably not going to work for you because he's doing it very well and he's been doing it all along. But the cool thing about podcasting is you can really find a niche group far more affordably and effectively and intimately and consistently than a lot of other mediums. So if you're like, I really want to talk about homemade pasta, that's a great podcast. Maybe it already exists, but like that kind of specificity, this is really the place for that. And there are so many specific things that aren't a part of the podcasting community yet. So yeah, there's definitely space.
That's so interesting. All right.
So really quick, just I've noticed, and I've been kind of, if you see me side eyeing, it's because I've got two screens and I'm like trying to look up about you, Liz. So you said you've done theater, and I see the Joseph sign up on your wall, the poster. So like, what have you done locally?
So I've directed the Joseph one is from Syracuse Arts, over a decade ago. And then Clearfield City, then Centerpoint and Hopebox and Next Stage, which doesn't exist anymore, but used OPA for one of its venues at one point. And Desert Star Playhouse, I have a show that's currently performing there that I directed. And I feel like I'm missing some, but those are like the big productions.
Do you only direct? Like, do you choreograph? I mean, I know you choreograph. I know you do other things, but like,
what else do you do?
What is your things that you like to do in theater?
I like to perform. I direct. I choreograph. I write. I don't write as much for plays as I do for radio plays or narrative fiction, but I do really enjoy it. And I mean, I got my degree in theater education, so I've been trained to be a lighting designer, a sound designer, a costume designer, a stage manager. I have less experience in those areas because I spend more of my theatrical time doing the other things.
Sure. So when you're directing a show, how do you start? Like, what's your, like, if OPA was going to call you and say, hey, we want you to direct Matilda, we already have a director, but let's just pretend. Where do you start? Like, how do you decide the projects you get involved with, and how do you decide their value, all of that sort of stuff?
I guess the first thing's really boring. It's just logistical. Like, does that fit in my calendar and my current set of work commitments? Then the next one has to be financial. And I don't want to apologize for that because I feel like that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where like artists can't advocate for themselves as business people, maybe. So yeah, the financial consideration, not that I won't do things for free or that I won't do them for less pay, but I have to take into consideration the amount of time it's going to take me, what my travel is going to be like, the amount of just like exertion the project will require in order to be successful. And then even then I try to do like a gratitude project every 10 projects where that is not a consideration at all. I'm just going to donate my time for whatever the thing is. So I'm trying to fit that in as well. And um then it's values based, right? Like, what's the messaging of this? Is this something that I want my name associated with this message? Um does it fit in with my activism or my values, or the things that I feel like art can do on a meta meaningful level?
What's so interesting about this to me is that it's completely different than the way you approach your podcast.
Yeah.
The podcast is all about trying to learn and like where you're curious about and all of those things. And I honestly I prejudged your answer on why you do what theater you get involved with. I expected you to say because it shows that I want to learn from or that have got things that I want to delve into them. And it's interesting to me that it's different. Why do you think it's different?
Well, I think that if you are going to have a sustainable professional career in the arts, you do have to make business decisions because you need to eat, or you need and I have a breadwinner in my spouse. So I don't always have to make it based on eating, but I do feel like it helps me justify the time away from my kids as a mother if I am being financially compensated. Um, that may have been a tangent that we didn't need to go into, but there you go. Blah. Uh,
Well, but
I
at the
think it's
same time,
important to have both things, right? You need something that creatively rejuvenates you and something else that is like, it's a profession. So I get to make it based off of professional decisions and metrics, I think.
well, and I think that, you kind of address this, but, you get to a certain point where your time becomes incredibly valuable. I remember when I was first married or younger, I was like, what, you want my time or my money? Well, you reach a balance point where your time becomes much more valuable than your money is. And so valuing your time is critical. And I think that to a certain degree, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but just from what you've said, you get different types of value out of the podcast than you do out of doing the show, than directing or being in a show.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, nobody can create time for me, right? It is my most valuable resource. So, and I literally have tried to say yes to everything I've ever wanted to do. It's not possible. So you have to choose based off of other constraints. And sometimes those constraints change over time, and that's totally okay too. And my constraints don't have to be the same as anybody else's. I'm not saying you need to value it this way, but yeah, if I have to make choices, then I need to make those choices based off of something that I understand as a principle that will make me happy or is necessary for my survival.
So are there shows that you wish that you could have done that you didn't, that you had to pass on?
Yes, all the time.
Do you regret it? Do you have regrets?
No, I don't think so. I just there's this poet, I love her. She's amazing. She's dead. Sorry, everybody. Her name's Sylvia Plath, and she has this quote that I'm going to butcher the crap out of by paraphrasing, but she basically turning thing, right? Like, there's always something more for me to learn. And if I'm learning in the same place with the same people, that's going to be harder for me to really gain a whole bunch of new stuff from that. So, yeah, I can't really think. Okay, here's what a venue would have to be for me to not want to work there.
Okay.
Unsafe, disrespectful, wasteful, gross. And then then I don't want a part of that. But if people are operating according to the values of like safety, well-being, caring about people, and like best practices, yeah, it doesn't matter the size, the scale, the budget, the location. I'm interested.
It's good to know.
I feel like we're interviewing. Like, let's see.
Excuse me.
So as you're traveling through life, because like one of your latest podcasts is of a male model, Karchner, who I don't know. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know. But as you're traveling through life, how do you pick who's in like this? I know you say it's about, but how did you even find male model Ethan Karchner? Like, what were you at the grocery store and Ethan was like, "Hey," and you were like, "Hey, you could be on my podcast because you're a model." Like, how does this happen? Like, where do you get all these people from?
Typically, just from like being involved in the arts and entertainment community. Ethan's actually a film actor, and we were on a set in Illinois earlier this summer, and we got talking like actor to actor. I found out he did all this modeling stuff, and the way that he would talk about modeling was so interesting because I don't think I thought modeling would be something I'd be curious about very much. But in talking to him about it, I was like, oh, now I have loads of questions for you. Hey, I should interview you, and we should let other people hear the answers to your questions. But sometimes it's like for the tattoo artist, I just threw a call out on Facebook and was like, I should probably interview a tattoo artist. I have questions about that, and I don't have tattoos. I don't know any tattoo artists that I'm aware of. So what do y'all think? And then my friends commented, and I Facebook stalked a couple of them and was like, I think this person. So it can be very random, but typically I like to vet my guests as much as I discreetly can without them knowing I'm vetting them, because I want to make sure that they can provide answers that will satisfy my curiosity, that they think about what they're doing and why they're doing it in a kind of academic and reflective way, and that they know how to talk about that.
Yeah, I can imagine that conducting a podcast with someone who's an expert that says yes, no, probably would be difficult.
Yeah, it's I've not always done very well at that, but I think I've gotten better at figuring out who is a good fit for me too.
As you were talking about filming in Illinois and whatnot, it made me think about COVID. How did COVID affect your podcast, and was it better, worse?
It put my podcast on Zoom, so the audio quality went pew.
Sure.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
It made scheduling my podcast with my guests really easy, because if we wanted to interview at like 10 p.m. and be in our jammies from the waist down, like nobody knows. So, and a lot of people were home, and a lot of people in arts and entertainment like were suddenly available, had a lot of time on their hands. So that part got a lot easier.
Dan and I are both in our pajamas from the waist down right now, just so you know.
Awesome.
All right, last question.
I'm wearing a sweatshirt, so I could be in my pajamas up here too. So
Stop talking, Dan. Stop talking. Last question. This is the one. What does community matters mean to you when you hear that?
I think that what it means on the surface is that we all need somewhere to belong. But I think what it means to me personally is that if we get involved in the community matters, it matters more to us and we matter to it. So it's not just a like, I don't know, happy mantra of like, we should all take care of the community, but like, we are our own community. So if we're not taking care of it, then we're all damaged by it. And if we are taking care of it, it's taking care of us too. Well, I hope that doesn't sound like vague and froofy.
It sounds delightful. I think it was a great answer. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And it's great to hear, your opinion on that. So yeah. All right. Well, we have to say goodbye because we've reached our time, but you are a gem. It's been a delight talking with you.
Thank you. It's been so fun. Thanks for having me on to chat with you guys.
Yeah, so we didn't even get to address the fact that I often see you at FanX for brief moments when we see each other, and it's always like a hi, how are you? Great, how are you? Great. Gotta go. Love you. Bye.
True.
It's always the way it works with this because everybody's busy. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us, and everybody can check out your website. Again, the address is lizzylizzyliz.com if they want more information on you or your podcast or any of that information. So it was really delightful chatting with you. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Have a good night, you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Can we talk about how great she is? I can still see her camera. So she's hanging out for a second so we can have a post-mortem. That's right. A weird term that I just said. But anyway, she's great, right?
It's been it has been a joy hearing from
Yeah.
her. And I love that her curiosity has pushed her not just early in life with all the different things, but the fact that she's utilizing the podcast to satisfy curiosity, not to share anything, but just like as bad as it sounds, but to be selfish and to get a lot.
Take the time to learn the things you want to learn. Like, it's
Yeah.
so great. And like, as we were talking, I was like, oh, I want to know more. Like, I'm going to have to email her and be like, hey, so let's talk about, because I thought it was great. But anyway,
I would love for her to do a podcast about podcasting.
oh, I think she should do a podcast about herself. This is
Ooh,
what I'm
interview
saying.
herself.
She should interview herself.
Yes.
And now we're going to be really embarrassed if she's already done that and we didn't do enough research to find that out. Oh, she hasn't. We're good. We're good. She's shaking her head. We're fine. Whew, that was scary. All right. Well, Dan, we're off next week. We're not meeting next week because it's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving Day.
I'm going to be eating pie instead of being live on this screen with you. But we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we have Heather Ann Jackson, who is a published author that I'm super excited. She wrote this. There it is. Chasing California. And you can get a copy of the book if you want to know more about what the book's about. You can get it on Amazon. So you can join the conversation with her to talk about her book and being an author and all of that. So that's in 2 weeks.
Awesome. I'm excited about it.
Dan, as always, I just love spending 30 minutes a week with you. It's really the highlight of my day, week, year, month.
I'm glad to hear that. Actually, I really do look forward to these little chats. Because most of these, at least to this point, it's a lot of people that that I don't, and so I get to meet new people from the safety of my living room
in your pajamas.
In my pajamas. And that's good. It's great for me.
Everybody, as we always say, make sure to go out and support the arts, especially theater. Support theaters wherever you can, not just here at OPA, but go find theater. And again, I will say, it is high school theater season. Go support those amazing kids doing amazing work in your local high schools. Go see the shows. All right. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have the most wonderful Thanksgiving ever. Bye.
Bye.